Hey guys, it's Catherine and I'm here today to teach you how to make a super quick ombre effect in Procreate. I am going to show you two different ways to do it. I'm going to show you the standard way where it fades from light to dark, and then I'm going to show you how you can do it where you have edges that are darker and then it fades into a lighter shade in the middle. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up Procreate and I'm just going to start a new canvas. You can do any size. I am going to do a square size canvas, but it doesn't have to be square for any of this. So next I'm going to select my brush and I am going to use a standard monoline brush. And I actually have a brush that's available for free in my Facebook group, and I'll link to that group in the video description, but it's called Mary Mono. And over here, I'm just gonna adjust the size. I'm gonna play around with the size for a minute. I actually think I'm gonna make this as large as possible. Okay, so now I'm going to grab a color. So I already know the hex code of the color that I wanna use. I'm gonna use a hot pink shade because I always go with pink, but there's this great website that I always use called colorhex.com. It's color-hex.com, and I'll link to that in the video description. And you can explore all kinds of colors on this website. So you'll see here on their homepage, they have a lot of colors that you can just choose from right here that are super pretty. But up here, you can search by hex code, name, RGB code, and possibly other options. I don't know, it cuts off at RGB, to find more information on whatever color you're looking for. You can also browse palettes right here. So there's several different ways to find color. So I am gonna search for this trusty hot pink shade. I have this hex code memorized, and I'm gonna scroll down a little bit until I see tints. So these are all of the tints of this shade of hot pink. And what that means is that each square represents this shade of hot pink mixed with a little bit of white, and they just progressively mix more and more white until they eventually get nothing but white. So that's what you're going to want to use to create an ombre effect. So to pull this into Procreate, I am just going to screenshot this, and I have the iPad Pro 3rd generation. So to screenshot, I just need to hit the power button and the volume up button, and that saved it to my camera roll. If you have the older iPad, you can hit the power button and the home button, and that will screenshot the page. So now I'm going back into Procreate, and I'm just going to pull that image in from my camera roll. And then I'm going to do a little rectangle selection just around the tints because I don't need this whole page. I just need the tints. And then I'm going to hit duplicate. And now I'm going to delete that whole image, and all that's left behind is the tints. So I can just move this to the top of the page. So from here, you can just do your color picker each time if you want, but to make things move a little bit faster, I am going to put these into a color palette. I actually already have an ombre pink color palette somewhere in my color palettes. I have so many color palettes. Here's my ombre color palette, but if you wanted to start a new color palette, all you would have to do is hit this plus sign, and then you've got a new color palette. So now I am just going to use my color picker. That's what I call it. I don't know if that's the proper term for it, but I call it the color picker. And one by one, I am going to add all of these shades to this color palette. So I'm going to start with hot pink, and I'm just pressing down for a second until I see that bubble, and then going back to my color palette and putting it there. And then on the next shade, I'm going to do that again. And I'm just going to move on down the line until I have every shade of pink. I don't want to pick up the white. Okay, so there is that whole range. So now I can just delete that image. So using my monoline brush, I am going to put a bunch of streaks on the page. So you can really do this with any brush. I do recommend doing it with a solid brush like a monoline brush because we're going to do a blur effect to really blend those colors together. So If you want your ombre effect to have a texture, you can actually do that. That's a little bit more complicated, but I really think just using a solid brush and then blurring the colors together makes it look great. And it makes it look really smooth. It gives it a smooth transition. So that's what I recommend doing. So I'm just gonna start with this darker color down here, and it doesn't have to be perfect at all, but I'm just gonna color in the bottom of the screen, and then with each color, I'm gonna just create another stripe. And just make sure you don't leave any white space unless you want to. Okay, so now I'm gonna just stretch this texture a little bit. I put all of this on one layer, so then I just hit this arrow right here, and now I'm gonna stretch it so it fills the whole square canvas. Okay, so I'm still on my ombre layer. So now what I'm gonna do is I am going to go to my adjustments panel, which is this little wand right here, and I am gonna select Gaussian blur. And then I'm just gonna take my Apple Pencil and drag it on the screen and blur it. And you can do as much or as little as you want. So you'll see if you do it all the way, it gives it a good ombre effect, but I prefer to do it where you can't really see the lines anymore. So like right there, you can still see the lines, but then you drag it a little bit further to about, that's about 28.8%. I could probably go up to 29 or even 30. Let's go for 30. And you get more of a range when you don't max out the blur. So 30 works in this case. So I'm gonna keep it there, and then I'm gonna deselect this by double tapping my arrow. There's probably another way to deselect it. That's just how I deselect it. So now I've got this ombre effect, and now I could just save this to my camera roll, and then I could use this as a texture for literally anything. So if I create a lettering piece, I'm gonna hide that really quick. I'm just gonna write hello. And now I could take this texture, move it above my lettering layer, and then I could size this to fit over my lettering. So the way that I like to do it is I like to adjust my opacity of my texture, and then I can really see how much of it is going to cover my lettering. So I'm sizing it down. This will just give it the best effect, and it'll give you the most color range. The most color range? It'll give you more of a color range is what I'm trying to say. I like to drag my texture, especially in this case when it's ombre, to where it just, you know, you want it to cover everything, but it's just enough to cover everything and not a lot of excess. So now I'm going to turn that opacity back up, and then I can select clipping mask, and there you go. So that looks really nice. Okay, so I'm gonna delete that texture, and I'm gonna hide my lettering layer because I'm gonna use this in my next example as well. So to do a ombre effect where your edges are darker and then it comes in lighter, which is called a radial gradient or a radial ombre effect, whatever, it works almost the exact same way, except you just go in a different direction. And keep in mind, you don't always have to go from dark to light. You can go from light to dark. You can just use your imagination and go wild with this if you want to. So I'm going to increase my brush size, and now I'm just doing slightly thinner lines than I did before on the outside of the canvas. But again, it does not have to be perfect, and actually I recommend that it's not perfect, because that just looks so much better. In my opinion, it's all subjective, but I don't like perfection and symmetry when it comes to patterns like this and textures. The only thing to really keep in mind when you're doing a texture like this is you only need one line in the center. So whatever is the last and the lightest or darkest color that you use, whatever your center color is, you just need one line. You don't want to save enough space to put two lines together because then it's going to be a lot thicker in the middle. Which you could do that and it would still look good, but that's just my opinion. I like it to be close to the same size as some of these other lines. Okay, so now once again with this texture selected, I am going to go to my adjustments, go to Gaussian blur, and I'm going to drag this just enough where you can't see the lines. So this one, it's always going to be, you know, a case-by-case basis. If you go to 100% though, you're barely going to be able to tell that it's several different shades. So don't go to 100%, but you could go down to, on this one, I'm going to do 27%. And now, since this one is up and down, I don't really need to size it right over my lettering because all of this from top to bottom is the same shade. So this is going to go across rather than vertical. So it's not really important that I resize this. So I'm going to uncover my lettering layer and I'm just going to create a clipping mask, and now you'll see that fades out. So I could resize this a little bit if I wanted to and bring it in, but I don't need to resize height wise since it's going across rather than up and down. So that's it. It's super simple. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you did. Give it a thumbs up, leave a comment. Make sure to share your ombre creations in my Naptime Alternative Facebook group. Make sure you subscribe to my channel for more digital planning tutorials, Procreate tutorials, digital plan with me videos. I also have recently started doing studio vlogs, which if that's not your thing, you don't have to watch them, but they're there if you want to. Check out my Patreon page, which is like an exclusive digital planning club where you'll get tons of bonuses each month. And check out my website, naptimealt.com, where there's tons of planner-related freebies that you can download now.